Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Careers Podcast. Today, we'll be diving into the world of publishing and why authorship isn't just for celebrities. Today, I'm joined with Peter J. Snow, who's an author in his own right, who's here to share some of his wisdom when it comes to successes, failures, and how they all add up over time to create a masterpiece. So, without further ado, Peter, thank you for joining me. How are you today?
Great, thanks, Tom. Really good.
That's good to hear. Now, removing roadblocks for people who want to publish their stories is really what you're here to do. In our preliminary chat, there was lots of gems from your experience and your history that I think if we were to go through some of those first, it would be a really good way to set the scene. Could you walk us through where you've been career-wise and how that eventually led you towards, this publishing and authorship road that you're on now?
Sure. Well, I'm a dropout uni student. I had no idea what I wanted to be in my last year of school, but I was a lazy student. Could have done better, but I managed to get a Commonwealth Scholarship and a cadetship with the Public Works Department, which my father, because I was good at maths and technical drawing,
Yeah.
suggested civil engineering. However, 2 semesters in, I decided I didn't want to build roads and bridges, so much to my father's disappointment, I headed off into the world of commerce. I started doing accounting by correspondence course and night school. Ended up with an assortment of jobs in the accounting area, one of
Mhm.
which was in a low-profile, huge client printing works, which gave me a good background into the trade. And I had actually started my own printing business at the age of 12, imported printing machine from England and used to do all sorts of little print jobs for schools and other people. Anyway, I always had the entrepreneurial flair, and my last job as an employee was with the most dynamic man I've ever met, a fellow called Warren Jones. He had a dynamic hire business, and he actually was the logistics genius behind Australia's first win of the America's Cup. The company had a policy to actually sponsor annual subscriptions to any community organisation that staff wanted. And purely by accident, a friend of mine took me along to Fremantle JCs, where I was fascinated by the ability to learn to public speak, because like most people, fear of public speaking was something I wanted to address. And from there, it gave me all sorts of confidence in moving into the community sphere and project management. That led me to a point of saying to Warren, thanks, Warren, you've taught me quite a bit. Even though I'm young, I'm going to strike out on my own. I answered an ad for directors, investors in a new form of housing finance scheme, which ended up being a problematic issue. And it
Right.
evolved into corporate consulting. And from corporate consulting, I ended up being interested in the venture capital side and then moved into that and syndicated quite a number of interesting projects, a lot of which are covered in my book.
Yeah. When moving up the ranks through accounting and into venture capitalism, what were some of the main key things that you learned, particularly in that financial area of life?
Well, one, you need to look at all the potential risks, and that's a fascinating area in itself. You know that the success rate of startups is probably 1%, some say 5%.
Yeah. If you last longer than 20 years, you're in the top 10%. Is that right?
That would certainly be right. From my point of view, I've got a better than 1% average, so
Yeah.
I'm quite proud of that aspect. But there've been plenty of failures along the way, most of which have been outside my control, which you can't obviously, in most cases, you can mitigate the risk, but nevertheless, you're in the lap of the gods in a lot of cases.
Sure.
But it fascinated me as to how most projects, you need to look at the numbers first.
Mm.
What's your objective long term? Is it, a lifestyle? Is it an exit? And every project I've been involved with had an exit strategy. So you must start with the end result and work from there, work
Sure.
backwards as to how you're going to achieve it. But then you need to focus. And if you're relying on other people, you need to be very comfortable about the people. I've only really had 3 business partners in my life. One died. The other one taught me a lot about what I don't like to do, shouldn't be doing. And the other one is still a good partner in a number of things, if nothing more than joint lotto entries. We were in business for more than 20 years together. a
Of
perfect
course.
partner.
One thing I wanted to say in this area too was you sent through a review that somebody did of your book. It was quite a good review. They mentioned in there that you're not afraid to talk about the failures and the successes. The key takeaways come from the failures sometimes. So what's in there that that really helped you grow?
Fear of failure is something you should ignore. I mean,
Yeah.
when you look at that success rate of ongoing businesses from
Hmm.
startup, you know, there's 99% of people, or 95%, depending on which percentage you use, that started with all the right ideas and for various reasons didn't work.
Mm.
So don't be afraid to be in the 95%. But whatever you do, take out of whatever the failure was.
Yep.
I mean, there are degrees of failure and there's
Yes.
degrees of success. You must learn from everything that didn't work and make sure you don't do it again, or do it in a way it's not going to happen. That's really it. And I can give you one good example is that we had what might be regarded as potentially a huge success for Australian export. We backed a computer game inventor and we launched in America the first computer game simultaneously launched on 6 platforms. The little hook here was, how do you protect from piracy?
Yeah.
Because in those days, the disc could be copied and you'd have 500 copies and only sell one. So, and we linked it to a computer-generated code, and we had a $100,000 playoff contest in the Golden Nugget in Las Vegas for the top 20 players of the game in North America. Now, the experts said, because we launched and promoted on 6 different platforms, that we should sell a minimum of 140,000 pieces. In our costing, we only needed 42,000 to cover all costs, including the competition. Wow, it looked like we're going to be hugely successful. And we appointed an international distributor, well regarded in the industry, who's mentioned in the book, but I'm not going to mention the name now.
Okay.
They're still around today, surprisingly. Unfortunately, they blew through the $13 million they'd raised in their initial public offering, and they were going to do all sorts of wonderful things for us by way of promotion, point of sale, and so on, was part of the contract deal. And the initial order was 22,000 units. Well, that's great. The only problem is they blew through the 13 million. Ours was a casualty of their
Right.
failure financially. They didn't go out of business and they're still around today, surprisingly. But we had to sue them for the payment for
Man.
the initial stock. And we discovered, beyond our control. What
Yep.
more could we do? Everything was right, and we had to clean up the mess at the end. And we managed to walk away with, I think we lost our investor money pretty well.
100%. And I guess the legal implications, needing to go and sue, that's costing you at the same time, and you don't even know if you're going to win.
And what was worse is in those days, even though we had it insured through EFIC, the
Mm.
insurance corporation in Australia, which the bank had said was a waste of time, and it proved to be, they recommended we sue, which we did. The only problem is we had no money because we hadn't been
Yeah.
paid. And we had to get one of these contingent fee lawyers in America who took 25%. But
Mm.
from their point of view, any money was good for them. They're going to get 25%. So we ended
Sure.
up with half and they took 25% of it. So it was a disaster beyond
Yeah.
our control. I mean, what more could you do?
No, you couldn't. What I'm taking away from you, even just listening, is as long as you take on the key learning out of the failure and apply that going forward, that's really what matters. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there
I
have been
love that.
plenty of others. Most of them rely on people. That's the other aspect. If you're in any deal, in any starting business, you need to be very comfortable the people you're working with.
Yes.
Now, I take people at face value. I believe in second chances, but if you're giving somebody a second chance, you really need to be very sure,
Yeah.
because in a couple of cases it's come back and bitten me, even though we had the checks and balances in place to mitigate the risk. Generally, if something's gone wrong, there's a good reason, and
Yeah.
you need to be twice sworn twice shy.
All right, so that's a little bit of the venture capitalism side. When we
Sure.
move further down the pipe and we go to non-for-profit work, because that was another key concept that came up when we were talking
Sure.
originally. Tell us about non-for-profit work, how you got into that from this, and
Well,
what we
the
did there.
JCs, which is now called JCI internationally, it's the world's largest personal development organisation for young people. The age limit's 40, which means that I've been out of it for quite a while. But I'm a life member of the World Organisation, so I
Nice.
still have the connection. But we initially, having gone into it for personal reasons to learn how to public speak, I switched over within 12 months heavily into the community area, which I found fascinating. So if we can help the community in any way, that drives almost everything that I do. And certainly in the last 20 years, it's more than half my time is spent on community. And it's amazing the people you meet, which are the basis of a number of my books. Interesting people you meet in the community. So the JCs and the time in Western Australia, certainly, um, the system works that each of the office holders only hold office for a year. And the purpose of that is to give you training in different roles.
Sure.
So what do you do when you've got a major project that's ongoing? All the people change that year, so you end up with a disrupted program because of the new people and the lack of history and background. I mean, it's important they get you know, they get the experience, but there needs to be an overlap.
And
Okay,
quality of transfer of information at least, or so I could imagine that's really messy.
it is, it is.
Yeah,
So if you've got a major ongoing project, you really need continuity. So I came up with the concept of a separate incorporated charity as a spin-off of the state body, which actually was 50 years ago this year, and it still exists in its evolved form, which is really pleasing. And that undertook projects that were too big for individual JC clubs or chapters, and so the JC's Community Foundation was formed. It's a registered charity. It put landing lights on one of the country airstrips, the Royal Flying Doctor Service. It pioneered computerised medical alert systems in the state and lobbied the government to bring them in free, which happened. But probably the most significant project was, and whilst it's a fairly long story, it's quite short in terms of the entry, is the over a dinner in the Gold Coast, I was given one of the last whale chasing ships in Australia. It was an old client I'd bumped into purely by accident in a hotel in the Gold Coast
mm,
and ended up having dinner with him to find out their family company had bought Australia's last whaling company and the station in Albany. And they closed it up. I knew it had closed a matter of a few months before. And on inquiry, I said, "Well, what did you do with it?" And he said, "Well, we took any equipment we could use at our factory here." They were the biggest meat exporters in WA at the time. We auctioned off everything else except I'm stuck with 2 ships. And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, the successful tenderer had a condition in his contract to say that if we couldn't get heavy-duty lifting gear onto the town jetty where the ships were moored, so he could cut them up for scrap and take the scrap away by
mm.
loading it on um, vehicles on the wharf, then he would rescind the tender." And he said, "The barnacles have eaten the pylons, so the wharf's unsafe, and we've got these 2 ships back." And I said, "What was the tender?" And he said $6,000 each. Well, my quick mathematics was that didn't sound like a lot of money for a 700-ton, 150-foot ship.
Yeah.
I said, "I'll buy one on condition you deliver it to the Swan River." And he said, "What on earth are you talking?" I said, "Well, actually, I'll find somebody to donate the $6,000 to the foundation I chair. We'll put a retiree caretaker gatekeeper on board somewhere, charge $2 a head, and if our foundation can't make 50 grand a year, there's something wrong." And he said, "If that's the case, you can have it." We were offered this ship, and I headed back to Perth. We found a place in the river to put the ship. And then Colin Green, which was the donor, his people rang and said, "I need to talk to you about Colin's promise." Said, "Great." We'd already had a media release drafted, ready to show him, and came into the office and I said, "Look at this, we're ready to go." And he said, "Small problem. It's going to cost 30,000 to crew it and fuel it to get it to Perth, and it needs a $1
Oh.
million insurance bond because it might sink in transit. So we don't want to go ahead. And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, what about the whaling station?" I said, "What about the whaling station?" He said, "Do you want that?" And I said, "Why not?" They gave it to our foundation. As a result of that, all the risks that we subsequently went through were worth it because that has contributed more than 40 million to the local economy. It's now in the most recent tourism awards, it won 2 gold medals, including Best Tourist Attraction. And it's now, after 40 plus years,
Yeah.
we tested it in the local community about 2 years ago because we're getting a bit long in the tooth.
So the project itself was supposed to be a whaling ship originally, and
Yes.
that's where okay, and because of the logistics of moving that all around, where we went, okay, this is too hard. Why don't you have the station? And then we looked at the station, and that's what you've really transformed.
Well, we said, "Well, what am I getting for our donation?" Well, it was
Of course.
a 20-hectare oceanfront site in Albany. What was left of the processing plant, 2 whale chasers, 6
Yeah.
houses, and 300 bent harpoons. That's why about a third of my book covers that project, which ran over more than 40 years. There's more than 2.5 million people have been through there since. It had 70,000 people through there last year. When you're talking millions of dollars later of development, and the success, it's got more than $2 million in the bank today
Yeah.
and it's debt-free. But you don't contemplate the risks when you're given a gift like that. There's got
No.
to be something you can do with it. So our team got together and worked out. We ended up with a management issue because, we're 400 kilometres away in Perth from a site that we've just been given. And there are all sorts of logistical issues which were dealt with. But we had a partner in the former whale spotting pilot and his wife. They were running a little museum at the front. So we did basically a partnership or a joint venture with them. They got sort of the cream off the top from the tourist numbers going through, paying nominal admissions. And then, we plodded along, grabbed money where we could, and undertook some major grant raising with a big vision. We put a lot of work in to the strategic planning of where it could be. And
Mm.
in fact, I lived on the site with my wife in one of the whale cottages for 3 years, mid 2000s, planning the next 25 years of development for the rest of the site.
Yeah.
So today it's got Albany Biodiversity Park, it's got flora representing 80% of the flora unique species on the south coast. It's got a wildlife collection of Australian animals. It's got an amphitheatre for 2,000,
Mm.
a grassed amphitheatre. And the only thing that isn't complete since the original extensive planning process we went through while I was living on the site is the subterranean accommodation or hobbit housing, if you want to call it that. They're
Hobbit
designed,
housing.
all we need is a nice bankroller that's got accepts the vision.
Yeah, okay. I love that. And also, I think one other notable thing about you was the OAM, is that what you call it? The award?
Yeah, the Order of Australia Medal.
I looked into those too. They're not easy to get. You can't just like get somebody to put you in the
No,
hat.
I
Like
mean,
there's
I'm very
years.
honoured to have received that award. But alongside that, and I'll expand on that in a moment, but I also received the WA Heritage Award for voluntary individual contribution.
Hmm.
More important to me, well, personal awards are very nice. It's all the other awards, museum, heritage, tourism, that we've won over the 40-year period that reflects all the effort, everybody from the counter assistant in the gift shop through to the volunteers, the CEO, the board which we put in place to manage the business. It's all credit to them,
Yeah.
and that's more important. Celebrating success as a team, not individual success.
I think the thing that's most inspiring is that it was such a project that you would think, no way is this going to work. But look at the outcome that was generated. That's what I find the most inspiring about it. But
You know, I'm a fairly positive person, but there are a few others that are more positive than me. And the important thing was to have a good team. Our team It was together for many years. In fact, we lost 3 of them out of the original 9 in the last 6 months. The team are not yes people, people that are not afraid to say, "I don't think that's right. Have you thought of this?" You don't need all no, you don't need all people that agree with you. We need mixed views to make you think twice.
And do you know what? I've not had that much experience in governance. I'm getting a taste of it as I get a little bit older. But that key characteristic as well, being able to not be a pushover and a yes man, and do it because it's for the greater good, like to question things.
Absolutely.
It it is the key characteristic that people need. So yeah,
Yeah.
what you're saying
Spot
to
on.
me is just it's hitting me. Like I'm like, yes, it confirms
See,
everything I'm starting to learn.
I'm a great believer in succession planning too, and that's what we did with the whaling station project.
Mm,
We set in process 10 years ago a transition plan so that 2.5, 3 years ago now, pardon me, we transitioned the board to a local board. So
yeah,
it's now actually controlled by the people of Albany, right?
sweet.
Which is where it should be. It's community owned asset.
And puts the money back in their pocket. They can do whatever they
Absolutely.
want with it. That's awesome. I love it.
Absolutely.
Now let's go on to your book. Timing is everything: the misadventures of a hapless entrepreneur. So it covers the whaling station in great detail,
Yeah.
but let's move more towards the publishing side of things now. So obviously, there's lots of great gems in there. But what compelled you to go right? I'm going to publish something about this. And can you tell us about the publishing journey that you went on?
Yeah, well, the publishing journey was sort of by default. My particular book came out of my grandkids because both my wife and I are now getting on. We thought the grandkids have got to have something, and they really need to know a bit of our history because until the grandkids were around, I didn't realise that when my children, the son and daughter, were at school and they were asked what does your father do? They used to say, "He works in an office." That was the
So
genesis of my book, and we incorporated that in an 80-page photo book we gave each of the grandkids last year, which covered their history, 6 generations through to the present day, with plenty of photos of their grandmother and me with them from their birth right through to the present day.
that's awesome.
But it covered some of the stories that are now covered in my book, and they said, "Well, this really is very interesting. We'd like to know a bit more." So hence I ended up with the book. Well, in the process of doing that,
Mm,
the foundation that I basically administer now, the JC's Foundation Limited, when I said, "Look, I think there's a scope here to actually do something. I'm going to do it anyway, but are you interested in potentially being the platform that books can be produced?" Because I love meeting new people. And as my other books, which are all the Not Ordinary Lives series, of
hmm.
which are already 2, and there's another 2 scheduled for the next 6 months, they cover 15 people each. And
Right.
I see there's a demand for short stories. I mean, I can't sit down and read a novel, 3 or 400-page novel, but I could sit down for 5 or 10 minutes. So that was the genesis of starting off with a publishing facility
Hmm.
that can cope with both online and paperback books. That could be short or it could be whatever you want, but they needed to be inspiring stories because I'm a great believer of people being inspired by reading inspirational stories. The greatest joy I get is when I write a story about somebody, is the joy that they get when they read about themselves and the way I perceive them. And
Yeah.
that is the great boost. In fact, there's one example today is a woman that was an engineer turned Nordic cracker maker.
A cracker
She,
maker.
yeah, she just sold the business after 10 years.
Yeah.
She was supplying crackers all around Australia. These are high ticket items, but I spent a little bit of time with her before she started, and she was sort of picking my brains about the business side because she was an engineer.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just one thing, but the comment from her was just fantastic, and I know that's given her a real boost as well.
Mm.
But it's something that she can pass on to her family, and there's a permanent record, and that's what I find in most of these people, is that there's a personal record, not just for you, but people that you know and friends and family. So that was the motivation to actually get into the publishing. But in the process, discovering there wasn't any platform that really covered a sort of a one-stop shop. Now, we're not quite to that stage now, but BeInspiredBooks.com is at least to the point where we've got a publishing platform that deals with the administrative end of the sales and distribution online in particular. When, as you said, we'll get into the other areas of the complexities of the
Well,
publishing market.
this is the other thing I wanted to talk about too, because like it's a very good basis in terms of sharing those short stories. And just one thing I wanted to add in there too is, you know, that fulfillment you registered when you saw that person reading their story back. Do you think that's because people don't give themselves enough credit about how cool they really are? Like
Absolutely.
you don't really
It's
take a lot of
amazing.
time to do that, but when someone reefs it out and puts it in front of you and goes, look how cool you are. It's like that's the ticket.
It is. I mean, the fellow that amazed me was former premiership captain of a footy club that I'm tied up with. He came to me only a few weeks before Christmas and said, you know, the one thing I like about my story being there is it told my father's story.
Yeah.
He came out to Australia as a non-English speaking immigrant from Poland. So traced his history of the hard life they'd had to get to the point where this fellow is actually president of the footy club now and
Yeah.
has been for 10 years. I mean, those are the sorts of things that people, I think, really appreciate. There's
Yeah.
their history, which they
Yep.
wouldn't otherwise have for their family.
And being able to have tools that can help you get that out is even
Absolutely.
cooler. Let's go with the complexities of this current publishing environment, the one that we spoke out in the preliminary chat. It was quite prominent. Penguin, I think, came up and like, you know, I couldn't really understand why people would even want to go to someone like Penguin, but let's talk about the complexities of
Okay.
general
Well,
publishing.
firstly, we have a little publisher here called Fremantle Press. Now, I joined the Federation of Australian Writers last year purely to understand how their system works. Well, the guest speaker was from Fremantle Press. Now, they get hundreds of submissions, and I presume that applies to all the bigger publishers too. So, when you take out the high profile people like the top sports stars, the business tycoons, you know, you've got a very remote chance of catching somebody's attention within a publishing outfit. It'll bankroll and take you as a risk it may never sell. And they're hopeful that the story is sufficiently interesting or they can put enough dollars behind promoting it to become a seller that makes them money. But in the process, those that have done the actual book end up with a relatively modest slice of the pie.
Right.
Now, from our point of view, and certainly the majority of my books, 50% of the royalties go to charities, right? So
That's solid.
that's a different hook. Um, but all of the people in my Not Ordinary Life series have committed their share of the royalties to a charity of their choice, which is a novel way of doing it.
Yeah,
But it
that's bloody
also
awesome.
increases awareness. So at the moment, there are 10 charities that will benefit from the first two books, obviously because it's related to the Tribe series, which is all focused on a footy club. But the other books, there's 15 different charities will benefit from the next book, Movers and Shakers, due out in March. So
Nice.
that's one way of doing it. But by having us as the publisher, the only real costs are production and the credit card fees and the postage. And if you have a paperback, online's different. And then all my books are available internationally online and available as print on demand as well. But our focus is to optimize the royalties by putting them through Be Inspired Books. So in our case, it costs nothing to get listed in Be Inspired Books at this
Hmm.
stage anyway. But if somebody's got a manuscript, they can come forward with the manuscript. We can make some recommendations. The only real cost is going to be a fancy cover, and that can range depending on where you have it done in Australia or overseas. Make sure the cover's right
And
and the ISBN number.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So just so I understand this as well, when it comes to publishing, there is a range of ways or mediums that people can get them out there.
Sure,
They can do the paperback, they can do the digital online version.
sure.
Can you facilitate all of these with the inspired books? So depending
Yes,
on
we
which
can.
method?
Yes, we can. That's the I mean, from our point of view, we're at the infancy stage. My books have been the pilot program to get the bugs knocked out of it. One area that we've had considerable difficulty, which we are working on a number of test programs in the next month. I've had some experience in marketing. I, I've won a world award for the best national public relations program in the world.
Yeah.
Um, so I do know a bit about marketing apart from retail product as well. So
Well, look at the backdrop.
yeah, well, that's right. In terms of the book marketing side of it, there are so many offers out there, and
Mm,
they range anywhere from $199 through to tens of, $10,000, 7,000 for somebody that will help you do everything. In a lot of cases, may include some books, it may not. You may have to pay extra. There may be extra fees, but in the main, the one-stop shops are really about making money for them, not necessarily for you. So we just think there's a potentially better way to do it to optimize the result. The easy bit is writing. It's
right.
easy. The easy bit is writing, but
Mm,
it might be the best kept secret unless you promote it correctly.
that's it.
We haven't got all the answers for that, but we're happy to work through it. I mean, I've looked at probably 30 different proposals and how to move the books, how to sell, how to promote on social media. So we're testing, probably we'll test 3 different methods in the next month or so, and hopefully build a relationship with somebody capable of delivering reasonably priced program which will optimize results. That's
Sure. I mean, and in this day and age as well, anybody that does want to get their thing out, they've got to be doing some sort of promotion or take accountability for getting it out there.
absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. And
We don't have that solution yet, but we're working on it.
well, I
We
mean, really, from the publisher's perspective, you really what I see you doing is giving people the resources or the ability to at least produce something of nice quality that isn't going to
Oh, certainly.
cost them an arm and a leg. That's
Certainly
really
do that. Certainly
yeah,
do that. I mean, people will charge for editing. Well, most of my books have been polished by ChatGPT.
right.
I mean, I don't have a problem. There's a very fine line though. You don't want the book written by ChatGPT,
No,
but there's
yeah,
no reason why it can't be finessed to the point where it's any rough edges and things are taken away. And it's so quick that you can use that. Just make sure the prompts are right to say, I want this to have a warm emotional feel. I've actually got a writer's chat bot that I've developed for my stuff to make sure it's sort of got the same feel.
one thing on that as well, and I really want to make it clear because I see this too with AI, is you can't, sure, it is great, it's very detailed, it can polish things, but unless you can put good in, you don't really get good out. If
Absolutely.
you put generic in, you get generic out. So that's
Absolutely.
really the key difference. And even anybody that were to think that, oh, they're doing it with AI, yeah, because that's where the world's going. But how good's your story that you're putting into it? And I think
Yeah.
you can't fake that,
No, no, that's the critical thing. I use it purely for the edit perspective and just making sure it flows correctly
of course.
and so on. So, and that's fine. And just coming on to that, in terms of the marketing, I mean, people get hung up. If we can switch to the marketing side,
Of
people
course.
get hung up about the bestseller list. Well,
Oh, yeah, that was a good topic from our
you
other chat.
if you go to ChatGPT, get them to search for you, how do you achieve bestseller status on Amazon? Well, I did that as an
Okay,
exercise
and
for the purpose of this conversation because, a lot of these experts promoting you should join them and they'll make sure you're a bestseller.
mm,
Well, in my category of business entrepreneurship, if it's just a wide general category of entrepreneurship, I probably need 500 sales to 1,000 sales.
sure.
If I put entrepreneurship subcategory, something else, and then fine tune it even further, I need
You know
between 20 and 50 sales in 24 hours. Doesn't know which 24 hours it is, but you might try and work out which is the lowest possible date that people are going to have any purchases of books. But you can orchestrate that yourself. So for somebody to offer you, we will make sure you're a bestseller, send us $5,000. Well, you can do it yourself. And pricing comes into it because a lot of them offer particularly the online stuff, the ebook stuff. Some of them are free. Well, what's the point of that? You're giving away the product. Give them a taste, but don't give them the whole pie, you know. I mean, it's just
I would
crazy. You can do it yourself.
I guess that would be even a thing that people deploy as well is like, "Oh, I'll put it out for 1 cent. I'll tell my 30 friends about it for this category that's just absolutely nothing burger." And then they can get to the top of that
And they can
category.
call themselves a bestseller on Amazon.
Man, do you know that is so disheartening to hear that there's book publishers out there that do that and actually
Oh,
feel good about saying that they're a bookseller, you
there's a
know?
whole industry out there. I mean,
Ah,
I mean, there's
makes my skin
dozens
crawl
all
a
of
bit.
different components.
Yeah.
Probably the best one that I've got, that I've come across, which does provide a fantastic service for the price,
Mm,
is 100 covers out of the US. So for $100, I can
mm.
get complete cover design right through for my audio book, my ebook, and my paperback. Now, I choose to go local, and I use a little Albany graphic studio to
I
do
love
that
that.
because
That's
I
awesome.
prefer to do that, you know, and you can get your own cover design software relatively, you know, 60 or $70, but it is important you get it right and
Yes.
you get it optimized, and you can use the AI programs to come up with the book descriptions, which I do use. I feed the book in and say, I want a 150-word description,
Yeah.
this book, using many keywords as possible that'll attract readers, right? And it'll spit it out in seconds, really. So, I mean, you know, you can use technology to your advantage. For instance, there's another aspect too. There's a total industry out there in the awards programs.
Oh, yeah, don't get me started on that.
Well, I mean, I've entered into a few just to see how the system works.
Sure.
And I think I spent probably 2 or $300. One byproduct was I ended up with a comprehensive review of my book, but they sent also a complete checklist of how it had rated. Most of them were fives or four. It's a five-star review.
This is the one I read, wasn't it, that you sent through?
Is that the one? I probably is. Not sure the
Yes.
business news editor did a nice one for me. I'm not sure whether you got that, but anyway, the five-star review, I thought, wow, I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
And then I looked at all the books that they'd listed, and I could only find an odd 4 star.
Oh,
All the
right.
rest were 5 stars. So what does
Okay.
that really mean? What
Yeah.
does it really mean? It's the main thing is, what is the objective of you publishing your book?
Yeah.
Is it to record history? Is it your legacy? Is it because you want to big note yourself? Or do you want to use it, for instance, as a marketing tool if you're a consultant of some type, or you're a speaker or what I know a lot of the speakers. Good friend of mine is Alan Peace.
Mhm.
Alan and I were in JCs together way back in a long time ago.
Yeah.
Alan's now speaking all around the world, has produced a number of books. He's noted as the body language man on TV and elsewhere. You know, it's all about the promotion. And if you want the book as a vehicle for, or as a byproduct of what you do, or as a lead in
Mm.
to what you do to get a bigger fee for as a consultant, well, that's one thing. But if you want it for as a historical legacy for you and your family, don't rush off and have 300 copies printed.
Yeah.
Print on demand these days. You can get 10 copies. You can get 5 copies.
Mm.
It's a matter of price per unit, and there's not a lot of difference between 40 copies and 200 in a price per unit. Don't end up with your garage full of paper.
Yeah. Smart. Well, okay, let's move on to that. So when somebody wants to publish their book, and let's say that they were to come to Be Inspired Books, could you take us through the end-to-end process of what that might look like from coming in
Well,
the in oh, yeah.
first step, submit, give us a Word copy of your submission. Let us have a look at it and work out how it can be produced. I mean, obviously, when you're going to print It's a little different to going online. Online's easy because your document can be converted to an EPUB or a PDF document. All you need is the cover and an ISBN number to
Mhm.
make sure it's in the saleable system, right? Because you must have, and that's I've forgotten what the price of it. We buy them in bulk, the ISBN numbers, because in say my books that are broken down into mini books, the mini
Mhm.
books are all available individually.
Right, and they've all
Individuals
gotta have
still
their
need
own
to,
ISB number.
yeah, they got their own ISBNs for
Okay.
both PDF and EPUB.
Yep.
EPUB is the one for Kindle, all right?
Okay.
So that's the point. So, yeah, send the thing in, let's have a look. We'll tell you roughly what it's gonna cost from a if you wanted a paperback. We're happy to assist in converting it if you wanted as an online product, EPUB or whatever. It's relatively simple to do that. We're happy to walk through that, and we're happy to offer it on our site as well. Or it can be international distribution, bearing in mind there are millions of books out there,
Of course.
and if there's no supporting promotion, it'll be an odd sale. In fact, we haven't done any promotion internationally, but I've sold 2 of my books, online versions, internationally.
But it's not also that publish or that distribution part, we've just said before, it is really on the individual to make sure that they're doing all of the right things. When
Yeah.
I'm talking about publishing and their experience with you, like, so they do they work with your team? Like, you guys get to sit down and make sure that it's a good fit?
Well, yes, I mean, as I said, the online thing's pretty easy. Um,
Sure.
that's relatively quick. For printing, it's a bit more complicated because you've got to make sure the layouts really fits the program. You've got to work out the cover, obviously,
Yep.
has a spine width. So you've got to work out how many pages, whether you want it on thick paper, thin paper, whether you want colour, whether you want just black and white. My being the Misadventures book is colour
Mhm.
inside, whereas the other ones are black and white inside. Right, they're
And
cheaper, obviously.
yeah. Is it more of a liaison process? So step 1 is
Yeah,
submit something, then we go through what's available in terms of publishing, what you could do,
yeah.
and then mapping it to what the person actually wants,
In
and
in fact
then
in fact, this discussion has prompted me to think that we should produce, and we will, basically a cheat sheet or a checklist, all the things you need to look at
yeah, I think that'd be awesome.
as a pre-publishing, and we're happy to provide that as a freebie to get an understanding of what's involved. So you've motivated me to now sort of accelerate that
You've motivated
area.
me. There's so much in your story that I go, "Man, I hope I get a heap of that stuff done in my lifetime as well." Like, I love it. If somebody's sitting there on the fence and they go, "Oh, I would like to publish my story. It could be for X, Y, Z reason." What's the advice that you would give them to move forward and give it a crack, or even
Look,
give?
finish the book. Finish, finish, finish. The
Yep.
rest of it's nuts and bolts. I mean, I've got one fellow who, because we acted as the distribution and credit card processing and mailing facility for
Mhm.
another book, which we had nothing to do with the production of, it resulted in me getting an inquiry from somebody that got the book, got the promotional piece about my stuff. He got in touch and said, "I've been 5 years working on this book. It's 400 pages. It's a very unique topic. It's an individual biography. He's written about some well-known West Australian. Um, he doesn't know what to do next. He thinks that it'll be another couple of months to finish." I said, "Well, finish the book. Let me look at it. 400 pages is a big book,
Right.
and it's all that's A4, 400 pages, single spacing. That is a huge book."
It
And I
is.
said, "You might want to rethink that because postage, for instance, I find paperbacks, all of my paperbacks are aimed at under 250 grams, including the bubble pack mailer, which means that they're on the lowest possible postage cost."
Yeah.
Nobody thinks about those sort of things when you're writing.
But that's another thing too, where you have more content. That's where AI can really help, because as
Yeah,
long as you've got more, you can actually condense it and make less, maybe
yeah,
more succinct, but still
absolutely.
great. Yeah.
You want to reduce this to so many words, which is what I do. Is a lot of my stuff is take it down from 2,200 words to 2,000 words without losing.
Yes.
So yes, I mean, so anybody that's interested, if they go to my website, there it's an author's website, which is another thing. All the good books and all the experts say you need an author's website.
Well, we got
That's
one.
only, that's if you want to really get cranked up.
Yeah.
I'm only doing it because I've got a series. But if you're doing a one-off, it's probably totally unnecessary.
Sure.
But if you go to that site, you scroll down to the bottom of the page and click on the link. It'll take you to my author's database, shall we call it,
Hmm.
author in any information that you want about Be Inspired books or services. Just put the inquiry in what you're interested in. In the last question at the bottom, obviously you need your email address and name at the top, but
Yep.
you can skip over the promotional stuff in the middle and just go to the last question about can we help or whatever. Just fill that in and put your phone number in it too so that we can contact you by phone if necessary.
All right. Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time today. It's been
Pleasure
really,
is
really cool getting to hear more about your story. And yeah, it's exactly what I wanted. So thank you so
great.
much for coming.
My pleasure, Tom, and I hope all those writers out there will rush in and make inquiries, but whatever they do, finish the book and send it in.
Love it. All right. Thank you.